All right, thanks for tuning in to fantasy football coverage, Dynasty style, right here on the Ourlads Football Network. This has been a few years waiting. We've talked a lot about it, and it's finally here, and can't wait. We actually just got started with our draft today, so a lot to talk about there, including just the basics of Dynasty football, something I have never participated in before. Standard football, fantasy football guy. So I think we're going to have a lot of fun talking Dynasty fantasy football here on the Ourlads Football Network. Thanks to our partners over at Rotowire.com. And that also includes my co-host, who's going to be with me every week, John McKechnie, who is the college football editor and also the sports betting editor over at Rotowire.com. John, this is going to be a lot of fun. Thanks a lot for doing this.
No, absolutely, Greg. This is a fun idea that we threw together this summer, and I'm glad to see it come through. You know, it was great just hitting start draft this morning on our Dynasty League and just seeing the picks roll in and see how that's been unfolding. So yeah, this is a lot of fun, and again, thanks for having me.
Well, yeah, we're going to get into the draft so far because we started it at 10:30. We have 8 hours between each pick. We got on a roll there for a little bit, but the whole reason we have 8 hours, which is a really good idea when you're putting together a draft this far in advance, which is another good idea, is that we have a lot of professionals who are in the league, and Ryan Dunleavy, who's been on the network with me for the past couple of years. He'll be co-hosting shows with me again this season. He's a writer for the New York Post, and he's got a deadline. So it just happened to have a little bit of a timing issue there that's holding us up for about 4 hours. But he'll put his pick in before his other 4 hours are up. And that's why it's something that I'd never have been a part of before. But this is just a great idea when you're putting together a league as important as a draft is in your first draft to make sure that everybody has enough time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, again, you're talking about how a lot of people maybe haven't gone the dynasty route before for a league before. So introducing the idea of the slow draft, it just takes a lot of the headaches schedule-wise that you have to deal with. You got 10, 12 professional adults, like you were saying, managing their lives, families, kids, jobs, all that good stuff. And it's like herding cats trying to get, everybody on time for a 7:30 draft, some Wednesday before the season starts. So instead of doing that, just cut the headache out and just go ahead and have that slow draft. Try to set your queue on and everything like that. So if you're going to be away for a little bit, not throwing anything at Ryan there, but just as a etiquette thing, if you're going away for a bit, just set your queue and see how things unfold. But yeah, I mean, it just makes things a lot easier logistically. Everyone, at some point in an 8-hour window should be able to throw their pick in. So I think that's a good way of going about it. 4 hours is also good, but I think, like you said, we got on a roll a little bit earlier, and I think we'll find some more rolls here over the next couple days and start, cranking out a round or two a day.
Yeah, we'll talk again a little bit about how that draft is going. Before I do that, anytime someone is new to the network, first off, I want to find out a little bit more about you. And I mentioned your title. So talk to me a little bit more about what your specific roles are at Rotowire, your day-to-day, and where specifically can we find your work at Rotowire, and what are you working on right now, and what will you be working on during the upcoming football season?
So, the college football editor, I manage obviously our college football section. So that takes it all from a fantasy lens. So, myself and our team of guys, we do rankings and projections for all 130 FBS teams. It's a big undertaking, but we've got it launched right now. It's up on the site. If you click into the college football section and go into the rankings and generate custom rankings, you'll see it. Breece Hall, number one, the running back for Iowa State. So getting that all together, that's usually a big bit of the preseason work. And then once the season starts, a lot of management of that, guys that come out of nowhere, guys that flop, that sort of thing. So you want to make sure that those statistics, projections are all updated accordingly. But we have A ton of other stuff that I overlook, as far as our content is concerned, making sure that that's all up and running. We got DFS articles running every week during the season, start versus sit advice for your season-long leagues, waiver wire pickups, and then currently right now, in addition to the projections and everything, we've got like conference previews and other preseason stuff to get you ready for your season long drafts, that kind of thing. And as far as sports betting, I'm a little bit more behind the scenes managerial, just trying to make sure that we have our daily baseball betting articles rolling, our weekly golf articles. Those are the main things this time of year. And then, of course, we'll have a bunch of NFL betting stuff as well that I'll be overseeing once football season officially kicks off. So a lot of stuff going on.
Is the betting section, is that pretty new to Rotowire?
Yes. So we got it running about a year and a half ago, and I took on the role about a year ago when we weren't entirely sure if we were even going to have a college football season. So it made sense to throw me in there and see what we could do with it. And it's grown really, really nicely. We've got a Rotowire Sports betting account at Rotowire Sports that I help run as well. That's where it's an easy place to find all of our sports betting content if you're not just on Rotowire on the website itself. So that kind of thing. So it is relatively new, but it's obviously such a booming industry. I mean, we've got more than half the states in this country either have legalized it or have the legislation in place to get things rolling. So it's really just this huge untapped vein that I think can be as big as fantasy sports in general. I mean, I think it appeals to the common person, maybe even more than fantasy football in a lot of ways. So I'm excited to be a part of that. It's a lot of fun. I feel like I've learned a ton about that stuff over the last year or so, and but still feel like I'm always learning too.
Absolutely, we are always learning. But yeah, it's a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to checking that out as well. All right, John. So again, what we're going to do here for the next 15 minutes or so is, because I think this is really important. As I mentioned, I've never been involved in a dynasty football league before. I've been playing standardized fantasy football for about 20 years. So I know the ins and outs of that. I've started to learn, obviously, a lot over the past month and especially over the past few days about what you have to do in order to become a really good owner in a dynasty league. And one of the things that I thought was interesting is that, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think if you've never been in dynasty football before, you should be taking it like you're a real general manager in the NFL. Now, you might not have defense and special teams to worry about because we don't in our league. But still, everything else that you're playing with, quarterbacks, running backs, receivers, and such, you really have to run your team, your rosters, your trades, your draft, just as a general manager would. Like, especially when you're a first-year general manager and you're coming in and you have to decide, too, am I trying to rebuild this franchise? Is it a 2-3 year process? Or do I feel like I have what it takes after this draft and the way things shake down, and maybe it's my overall strategy that I want to win as early and quickly as possible? I think if you have that mindset, I think you'll do pretty well.
Yeah, no, I think you have it right in a lot of senses there. There are a lot of parallels between what a general manager does versus what you're doing with your dynasty league, because you're not just looking at these players through a 1 year lens. You're looking at potentially multiple years, and especially in our league, we will be starting 2 quarterbacks every week in this 10-teamer. So that's 20 quarterbacks, off the market right away. Plus, everyone trying to fill out their bench as well. So you look at how your quarterbacks are constructed, where you are with that. Do I have a couple of young developing guys? Do I have some established starters? If I have some established starters, am I trying to win right now? It seems like that would be the opportune time to do so. Or if you have an established starter, you could move him to a team that is looking to compete. If your team's not overly competitive in other spots, make that move. Help them help you in a way where you're not maybe competing for the title this year. They're one piece away. You can get a decent haul in return, maybe some draft picks for the following year, or a younger running back, a younger quarterback, a younger receiver, that kind of thing to kind of make it an even deal and set both of you up for future and current success.
That's actually another thing I like about it is that, like in your standardized leagues, I don't know how many times, like it seems like anytime I have a bad year is when everything goes wrong, and mostly it's injuries. It's like you have the injuries, and maybe even some of the depth players just aren't working out, and your season is pretty done by mid-season. It happens. But that's not the case in a dynasty league. And you could be trying to win as early as this year, but if your guys get injured, maybe they'll be back for next year, just like in the NFL. But you have to decide at that point, okay, am I going to be patient, wait for these guys to get healthy? I'll be fine next year. Or maybe I'm not going to be so patient. Maybe this is an opportunity for me to make some deals. There are other teams that are trying to compete for a championship, and maybe I could work out some nice deals and they'll package me some really good young talent that will be better and make my team better for 2022 while they try to win a championship in 21.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that if you can like pinpoint one of the things that might not be the strongest suit of regular standard one year long fantasy football, it's that oftentimes the trade market is kind of inactive, because everyone's looking at the same thing, everyone's going for that same 1 year goal. And that just kind of often leads to some kind of frozen trade markets where you don't see a ton of movement in your league. In Dynasty, that's completely different. You can just look at things from so many different ways. If you're sliding down the standings, you can just go ahead and kind of steer into the skid. Not that I want to say that we like incentivize tanking, but if you get that sense that if you're the team that has Dak Prescott last year and Dak goes down, your team's pretty much sunk right there because you don't have a good replacement. You're going to be rolling Andy Dalton out there the rest of the season. You're not going to win your title that way. So just lean into it a little bit, maybe sell off whatever's not nailed down, and you can just go ahead and set yourself up for this year's draft where you can go ahead and like get someone else's first round pick, end up in this particular case because it's well, I'll use the example of we were playing a dynasty league last year, and then this year you would go ahead and be able to get a Trevor Lawrence or a Kyle Pitts in your rookie draft the following year. So a lot of ways to go about it. I think like the kind of common phrase that a lot of dynasty guys use is like, even if you're losing, you're winning, because you can just kind of turn a tough stretch into something more beneficial down the line.
Now you mentioned, because actually this is something that came up earlier in the message board. You were talking about, I guess there were some questions about the draft and the future drafts and how that was going to work. And you mentioned that we're going to have a reverse order draft, and you did talk. You mentioned a little bit about tanking. So explain to me and anybody out there that hasn't played Dynasty before what that means by, okay, you had the draft set up this year. What do you mean by reverse drafting next year, compared to some people might be thinking, well, I shouldn't you be drafting first if you have the worst record, that kind of thing. So explain what you meant by reverse draft, and also, are we talking about tanking for obvious reasons, and how prevalent is tanking?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and so reverse order would be reverse order of the standing. So the team that finishes in first this year will draw the last draft pick. It's very, so it's a parallel to, obviously everyone knows the Philadelphia 76ers tanked for years, that kind of thing,
Got it.
or the Jaguars just tanked for Trevor, that
Okay.
kind of thing. So we try to, like you were saying about being a general manager, we want the way that the league shakes out to be a little bit reflective of how it would in the NFL. So tanking is a thing. Some people have a little bit stronger of a belief in their team that they'll be able to pull it out of the fire mid-season and make a run in the playoffs, that kind of thing. But other people, they get that feeling by the end of September, early October. It's like, okay, well, this is not going how I planned, and they just go ahead and just kind of pull the plug on it, and then you start tanking, and thereby jockeying for draft position to set you up for that for an early first round pick next year. So guys like Breece Hall from Iowa State, the running back who's a big deal, or some of the quarterbacks, Malik Willis, Sam Howell, a bunch of impressive quarterbacks, Spencer Rattler, that'll be coming out next year. So if you have your eye on those guys and your current dynasty team isn't doing great, then the decision to set yourself up for next year starts to come into play if you're sold on particular prospects.
Okay. Now, with the last 10 minutes or so, let's talk about what is going on in our draft.
Yes.
Now, I had the second pick, and I was just my bad for guessing that I was going to have to decide on who to take after Christian McCaffrey was chosen number one. I just figured, well, McCaffrey's going to be picked number one, so who my pick next is going to be pretty simple. So I was kind of all lined up. All right, I kind of know who I'm going to go with. And then Kevin Knight, who is one of my analysts from the Falcoholic, covers the Atlanta Falcons, threw a little bit of a curveball by taking Patrick Mahomes first. Now, in a standard league, okay, even that's a little bit, well, quarterbacks aren't even taken usually that first, but still, Patrick Mahomes is a little bit of a different player with the monster points he puts up. How odd is it that a quarterback goes number one?
So when it comes into the context of this particular format that we're playing, where you're starting two quarterbacks, that really puts a greater emphasis on the quarterback position, and you'll see over the course of these next few rounds how that influences how the rest of positional depth kind of shapes up, where you're going to be able to get like a Nick Chubb in like the third round of this thing, just because quarterbacks are being pushed up so much, because you don't want to be that guy holding the bag at the end where you end up with Jimmy Garoppolo or someone like that, or an Andy Dalton. So sorry to bag on Andy Dalton twice on this podcast already.
Unless you're trying to build a team for the future.
See, no, okay, fair point, fair point. But I don't know. For me, in year one of dynasty leagues, I think everyone is in the starting blocks together. I think that I think it's a good idea to try to go for it that first year, especially if you get off to a hot start. But we can talk about that particular strategy, a little bit later. But as it pertains to going quarterback first, especially in a two quarterback dynasty, Mahomes makes all the sense in the world, in my opinion. I mean, he's someone who's entering his fourth season as the starter for the Chiefs. The future's so bright. The quarterback position has so much longevity. Who knows if he'll adopt the TB12 method and be playing until he's 50. But either way, we can pretty easily see 10 more years of greatness out of Patrick Mahomes. It doesn't really take a whole lot of imagination for that to happen. He plays in a style unlike some of these other guys who went shortly after him, that have a little bit more durability concerns. Not to say that Patrick Mahomes can never get injured and doesn't run around or anything, but Mahomes more so just that pocket guy. He runs occasionally, but he's more so getting his points through passing. And I think that all of that just kind of adds up to Mahomes being that stone cold lock number one type of pick for this league. So it's something that you obviously wouldn't see in your regular starting one quarterback redraft type of league. But for this particular format, I thought that was a strong start from your buddy at the Falcoholic.
Okay, now is it stranger then that out of the first 8 picks, 6 are quarterbacks?
It definitely goes to show that there's a trend forming here, and it goes to show kind of where a lot of people's minds are as far as how they wanted to attack this. They didn't want to leave the first round without having a surefire
top-tier quarterback.
Yes, exactly. So
because there are what would you say? There's probably like about 6 or 7 of those, probably, right? And then you go to that next group.
Yeah, of these like total blue chip, either on their rookie deal still or just starting their second contract. Yeah, there's probably between 7 to 10 of those really truly elite assets. I think that the best one left on the board currently, as we head into the 9th pick, is Trevor Lawrence.
Yep.
But I think we'll probably see a Trey Lance, someone who's maybe not established just yet, but has all the upside in the world. We'll see him get pushed up, that kind of thing. So I think that there's a definite incentive with this being the startup, with this being the first draft in a 2 QB, where those young quarterbacks, either in their prime or entering them, really draw a lot of interest.
Now, a couple of the Ryans happen to be both my Ryans, Ryan Dunleavy, who I mentioned, and Ryan Talbot, who covers the Buffalo Bills for NewYorkUpstate.com, mentioned They have picks 9 and 10 out of 10. We have a 10-team league. And they felt that, I mean, I don't know if there's a specific word. Oh, nightmare. That's what it was. They a nightmare scenario. Now, I didn't think that was the case. I looked at it as, well, I think this is a great scenario if I'm 9 or 10 because all these running backs have now dropped my way, even though, yes, the quarterbacks have been taken away. So is that just because that maybe that's what they were thinking, is that they were at the bottom of the first round with drafting, so they were going to get those 2 quick picks that they probably had it in their minds that they were going to land one of those quarterbacks, and now those guys are gone?
That's probably a fair summation. I still think that Ryan Dunleavy has a good chance to get one of those guys that fit the bill that we were talking about. But your friend that writes for the Bills, he might not be so lucky, so he might go a different route. But he gets the benefit of double tapping. He gets the 10th pick of the first round, and then he gets to turn around and make another pick right after that. So that's huge. That enables him to go in a variety of ways without having to worry about, hoping that someone falls back to him on the way back. So he'll be able to identify the 2 guys that he thinks are going to build the building blocks of his team the best. I imagine a quarterback will be one of those, again, with all the emphasis on it. But, he will also have the pick of the litter as far as skill position guys go. I mean, he could go after a tight end. He could go after that. We still haven't had a receiver go in this. This is a half-point PPR format. But
by the way, let me sorry to cut you off, but do you think A.J. Brown, actually, I should say Tyreek Hill. Do you think that between A.J. Brown and Tyreek Hill, are those probably the top 2 guys consensus?
For Dynasty, I think you might you might be able to make an argument for a couple guys ahead of Tyreek that you definitely wouldn't if this was just a 1-year league.
Okay.
I mean, the position is in such good hands right now, and it's not like Tyreek Hill is over the hill by any means. He's still in his prime as well, still running away from people. But A.J. Brown, just because of the youth, this is just his 3rd year in the league. We still haven't seen his best football yet. He gets the lean from me as that number 1 guy. I think Stephon Diggs is right there. Calvin Ridley coming up, but he's sneaky a little bit older. He was an older freshman during his time at Alabama. DK Metcalf, Justin Jefferson, those are all guys. I wouldn't say that I would put them ahead of A.J. Brown, but it goes to show that they are some of the more intriguing dynasty type of options here, just based on this format, and you're investing in the present and the future.
Yeah, because that's one of the things that I was when I was going over. I don't normally care about how old players are, and I was realizing, just like you said, with one of the receivers, same thing with Cooper Kupp. I was like, I didn't know Cooper Kupp was 28. I go, wow. So that is one thing, though, that you do have to pay a lot of attention to. Not to say that should be a defining factor, but if you got a couple of guys that are pretty similar, and one guy's 24 and another guy's 28, well, you're going to go with the guy clearly that's 4 years younger.
Precisely, yeah. So that should be, not your end all be all, and sometimes it can lend itself to, just because people are worried about what the future looks like, that they can kind of discount the present, and they kind of end up undervaluing some of the more established veterans in lieu of chasing the upside long term for some of these other guys. So will that result in a Devontae Adams falling a little bit, or an Allen Robinson a few rounds from now, or a Keenan Allen? Those type of guys, will some of the younger players get jumped up just because they're worried about it? And if you're trying to compete right now, maybe Robinson's the guy that's going to give you more in 2021 than some of these, like a Jamar Chase. Although I still wouldn't advise taking like a Robinson over a Jamar Chase right now or anything like that.
Okay. Well, look, I know that in the next couple of weeks, once our draft is over, or we're pretty much at the end, I have no idea when this is going to, next week. What's your guess with experience, and when do you think our draft will be over?
Well, we got 20 rounds of this thing. We started this thing about 8 hours ago. We are 8 picks in. So I would guess it's still going on, but we're into the end game by this time next week.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's when we'll start to talk about I'll get into details, more details, because obviously I'm not going to pick your brain on certain things just yet, because we have a draft, and you have, you're not going to give up all of your
Holding it close to the vest, yeah.
So I've got some questions definitely that I want to ask about that, but I do want to ask you a couple quick more things before I let you go. One is your bench. Do you look at your bench, and we have 9 on the bench? Do you look at, and you can, that's where you can just do whatever you want. You can have 3 quarterbacks, 5 running backs, whatever you want. Is your bench basically, besides the quarterback, or maybe even including the quarterback, is it really basically your best 9 players on your board?
I would say in this context, I kind of view my bench as just a slew of lottery tickets, or at least the last 4 to 5 guys. That's when I'm
You're
just
gambling.
Yes, that's exactly right. And I'm not expecting all 4 of my last picks to hit, but if 1 to 2, turn into, to use an example from last year, a James Robinson or something, that payoff is massive. So you're hunting upside big time in the later rounds, and that's where my college background, I feel like, is an asset to me, because I can identify some guys that
Yes.
I can see might not be the guy this year, but coming into the second season, everyone will be jealous that I was able to get him, and I'm not moving him for almost anything type of deal.
No, I mean, I agree, and that's the reason. That is like a main reason that we wanted to put the Dynasty League together with our partnership, is because of the fact that Ourlads is really mostly about the draft, college players, and of course, having you on, being the college football editor, it just made perfect sense that we would get together and do a Dynasty League, and really talk a lot about something that's really hot in the industry, isn't it? I mean, this is something that I've been thinking about playing this for a few years, but even a few years ago, the difference in how much more popular it is now is like night and day. I mean, everybody wants to play Dynasty football now.
Yeah, I think a lot of people in the industry, or a lot of people that just follow along fantasy football, and that they have their home leagues. They have maybe 1 or 2 other that they're playing, get a couple best balls going. But it's a totally different way of looking at fantasy football, and I think like the barriers to access continue to be knocked down so that everyone can get in on this. Like I went over to Sleeper, which is the hosting app for this, or hosting service, and I had this league set up in 5 minutes with like out having to really think much about anything. Very intuitive. So like, if you had any sort of reservations, like, oh, like how am I possibly going to find a place to host this league? How am I going to be able to customize it? Places like Sleeper, but also my fantasy league, and a bunch of other places have an awesome product, basically, that's free. And so if you were on the fence about it and there had some reservations, you really shouldn't. It's a lot easier than you might think to just get the ball rolling on something like this.
Well, I mean, just like you said, it's free, and it's like I've only been using it for a very short time, and it's just very easy to use. And there's so many different things that you can dive into. It's just seamless. It just looks like anything that you want to be, especially when you're doing a draft like we are, where you don't have to rush. You can take your time, and they've got everything there for you as like an extra added bit of data as well, and easy to navigate. And I think it's been great to use so far.
Absolutely.
All right, John. So coming up next week, we'll get an opportunity, hopefully, depending on where we are with the draft, to talk a lot more about it and exactly how everything went down. And then in the coming weeks, we'll do things like talk about general fantasy football, dynasty football, regarding just what's out there and breaking down players. Again, we're not going to do that on this show because we're in the middle of the drafting, so the secrets aren't going to be out just yet. But once we're pretty much done with the draft, and we got several weeks to go before the regular season begins, a lot of other people still haven't drafted yet and won't draft until another few weeks. So we're going to try to put up as much information in the coming weeks. Take a look at free agency, rookies definitely, because that's, again, your expertise. And I know a lot about what's going on with the rookie players and second-year players as well, who could break out possibly after having a quiet rookie campaign in 2020. So these are the things that we'll be talking about over the next few weeks as we get ready to get this thing started, which I can't wait. And I just love the fact that we still have a long way to go in the draft, because this is definitely the fun part of the season. And I know how much more fun it's going to be too when the season starts, and we could also have fun with trades.
Yes, yep, all of it's awesome. We got an awesome fun month coming up here in the lead up to the season. Training camp in full swing, preseason, the Hall of Fame games tomorrow night.
Yeah.
So much to look forward to, and yeah, as this draft unfolds and we get an idea of how all these teams are shaping up, it's going to be a lot of fun to talk about, and a lot of good stuff coming up.
Yeah, we'll break down the teams and the strategies. I'll definitely, because that's what I'm going to do. I want to ask some of these guys when the draft is over, what was your strategy? What was your thought? And we'll definitely get some of the owners on our show as well as guests and get their opinion straight from their mouths as far as, because it'll be good to get another opinion outside of ours from time to time. And we'll definitely do that. So, John, I appreciate it. Great first show to get things started, and look forward to getting into this a lot more next week, especially if we're almost done with the draft.
Perfect. All right, great. Sounds good. And again, thank you very, very much for having me on. This is a fun thing we got cooking here. So again, thank you.
And by the way, just want to remind everybody, as you can see there on the bottom of the screen, you get a free 10-day subscription if you sign up at rotowire.com/PrimeSN. We'll get into a whole lot of what you can look forward to over at rotowire.com for the upcoming fantasy football season and everything else, including the sports betting section that John is a part of. So that's coming up. Check back with us, hopefully here. We'll look for you again next week and throughout the entire 2021 NFL fantasy football season. We'll see you again next time. I'm Greg DePalma for John McKechnie at rotowire.com. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you on episode 2.